actual lesson. So let me present here. Okay, so let's get into the actual PowerPoint here. So in lesson 2, we talked about the election of 1856, which was caused for a lot of division and a lot of separation. The election of 1860, there's basically the exact same situation. You have this overwhelming sense of division, not only in between like the Democrats and Republicans, but within the Democratic Party and within other parts of different parties throughout the country. So what you end up seeing in the election of 1860 is similar to in 1856, where we had kind of 2 separate races. You had a couple guys on the ballot in the North and a couple guys on the ballot in the South. You have the same situation that's going to play out in 1860. The Northern and Southern Democrats essentially disagree with what they think slavery, how it should expand, where it should go, those different kinds of things. Basically, the Northern Democrats wanted to support this idea of popular sovereignty, essentially saying, you know, in the West, if people are wanting to vote for slavery and they want to vote that they should have slavery or not, then it should be up to them. The Southern Democrats wanted to defend slavery at all costs, essentially saying they wanted to expand it wherever it was. So there's a convention. There's like a big meeting of all the people, all the important people in the Democratic Party. They're going to try to pick a person that will run for president in 1860. So all the important people in the Democratic Party get together and they say, we want these certain things to be followed in the Democratic Party, and then they're going to pick somebody to represent them on the ballot to be voted for, run against whoever is running on the Republican side. Southerners say, hey, we do not want to do this popular sovereignty thing. We want everybody to have to just have slavery. We want it to be accepted throughout the entire country. Popular sovereignty is accepted at the convention, meaning that the Northern Democrats win, and they say, the Southern Democrats are like, hey, we're not doing this, we're leaving. They basically lose, they're sore losers, they take their stuff, they leave, no presidential candidate is chosen. So at the moment, the Democrats don't have anybody to say, this is who's going to run for president in 1860. They try again. They meet again in Baltimore, Maryland. They still can't agree on the issue of slavery. And each part of the party, so the Northern and the Southern Democrats, they each choose a separate person to run for president. So let's say you have, you've got 1,000 people, and they're all kind of thinking the same way, but then there's a big division amongst that group of people, and half of them, 500 of them, go one way and 500 of them go the other. Well, now that group of 1,000 votes is weaker because you only have 500 over here and 500 over here. That's what you're going to see here with the Democrats. The Northern Democrats choose Stephen A. Douglas, who supports popular sovereignty. He was the guy that we talked about in the last lesson, where he was debating Abraham Lincoln a lot. The Southern pro-slavery Democrats chose the current Vice President of the United States, John Breckinridge, and he is from Kentucky. Breckinridge wanted the entire federal government, the entire United States government, to protect slavery in all of the territories. Stephen A. Douglas believed popular sovereignty should be the way to go forward. So now you have 2 opposing sides here of the Southern and Northern Democrats, and you have Breckinridge and Douglas, both of them wanting different things. On the other side of the ballot, you have the Republicans. So the Republicans choose one person. So now you have Abraham Lincoln, who is going to run as a Republican in this presidential campaign. So now you have the Democrats have been split in two. The Republicans still have one person that they are putting out in front of everybody. So their votes are more centralized. So again, back to that 1,000 people votes. If you have all 1,000 people going for one person, you're in a better situation than if you have 500 over here and 500 over here. Lincoln opposed the expansion of slavery into new territories or states. So basically, the Republicans want to stop slavery from expanding anywhere. They just want it to be in the same spot that it is, not in the Western. A fourth person comes into this presidential campaign, and a fourth party called the Constitutional Union Party. They nominate John Bell of Tennessee, and the Constitutional Union Party was to preserve the Union. They basically want to keep everybody together. Not a lot of, it's hard to run on that when you are trying to fight against people that are very polarized or very like on one side or the other. Being kind of in the middle is kind of hard to find any voice for yourself. So Lincoln and Douglas were on the ballot in the North. Breckinridge and Bell were on the ballot in the South. I have to pause real quick because my child is yelling. 1 second. You can still hear me though. So just a second. Everybody's gonna be crying. Don't worry. No worries, everybody. Don't worry. Everybody is safe, even if you hear crying. Oh. Okay. Yeah, you're out here. And there you go. All right. Coming back to the screen. Here we come. Walking back. Walking back. Walking back. Walking back. Okay, so let me get to this screen right here. So if you look at, so you have these four guys right here that have been kind of chosen to be presidential candidates for each of them. So you have Abraham Lincoln, he's Republican, Stephen A. Douglas, Northern Democrats, John Breckinridge, Southern Democrats, and John Bell is that constitutional, and yeah, we'll get it. And he is the Constitutional Union Party. So we've got a situation where Abraham Lincoln has by far the most kind of centralized support. He is the only candidate for the Republicans. He has the most support behind him. Northern states go for him because the Northerners do not want to expand slavery anywhere, and they want to, and they don't want to basically go anywhere over where it currently is. He is more popular in the North than Stephen A. Douglas is. So Stephen A. Douglas does not get nearly the support that that he thinks he's going to get, mainly just because Abraham Lincoln takes all of that kind of support from him. Breckinridge wins the Deep South, which means that those people are very supportive of slavery in the Deep South, and they do not want any restrictions on it, and that's what Breckinridge is running on. So no surprise that he is going to win most of that. Bell and Douglas, those are the people that kind of have, so Bell is the Constitutional Union Party. Stephen A. Douglas is the Northern Democrat. What I was saying earlier about it's hard to kind of find that middle ground is because Lincoln is running on a strong platform of we do not want to expand slavery, like no exceptions. Breckinridge is running on a strategy or a platform that says we want to expand it everywhere. The other two, Bell and Douglas, are like in the middle. They're saying, well, we kind of want this, we kind of want that. Like, I don't really know. That's not going to get anybody's attention, and that's not going to get a lot of people's support. If you want to really draw people in, you've got to take a stance. A lot of times, especially in a big national presidential election, you've got to either say, yes, I support this, or no, I don't. So if we look at back to my maps and things here, zoom in a little bit. Okay, all right, not that much. So this is the breakdown of the votes in the presidential election of 1860. Red is Lincoln. Green is Breckinridge. So those are the two men that get the most support in terms of electoral votes. And as you can see, it's clearly split. You have Lincoln winning in the north, Breckinridge winning in the south. Constitutional Union Party is Bell, and then in the blue is Douglas. And that what you see there is they kind of win that middle ground, those middle states. So again, you have two sides of the country. One is very pro-slavery, so they go for the pro-slavery candidate. One is very anti-slavery, anti-expansion of slavery, so they go for that candidate. And then you have the middle ground of people that are just in the middle of the country. And this is ultimately a way to look at, okay, these are the lines. I mean, when you get to the Civil War, this is what is going to end up happening. So let's see here. Let's go back. Yes, sir. Do you have a question?
Red means stop.
Red means stop. That's very good. Anything else to add?
Green means go.
Green means go, in case anybody didn't know that. Good job. So Lincoln does win the presidency simply because... Okay, what do you need to tell me real quick? Okay, great. Lincoln wins the presidency because of the North's greater population. So if you look at... You got to be quiet, though. Okay. I'm listening. So
I would get trust and go.
Okay, we will. If you look at the pie charts over here, what you'll see is that the popular vote really goes Lincoln's way, and that if let's say the Democrats actually were unified and they didn't have two candidates, what you would see is that Lincoln would have lost, because if both sides of the Democratic candidate ticket would have just said, we pick one person and not the other, or not split their votes, Lincoln would have not had enough. But since it is split and the Northerners have more population and therefore more electoral college votes, so even if you win all of these different states down here, Florida at this time only counted for 2 electoral college votes. But if you win Illinois, you get 11. So the reason that Lincoln is so successful is because he has so much success in the North. So back to the PowerPoint. Even before the election of 1860, many Southerners had threatened to secede from the United States if Abraham Lincoln was elected president. They basically say, we don't really care what happens. If he's president, we're leaving. Lincoln had stated that he would do nothing to abolish slavery where it existed. It's very important. That is what he's saying at the very beginning of this. He is saying, we will not get rid of slavery where it already exists. We just don't want it to extend into the West. Southerners, however, are convinced that's a bunch of bullcrap and it's a whole lie, that he is actually going to ban slavery and get rid of it all the way across the southern states. Southerners had based their argument on the theory of states' rights. The idea here is that the states have certain rights that can cancel the federal government out. It's an interesting theory. There's a lot of different things that apply to it. Most recently, in recent history, you have with the Affordable Health Care Act. You have that's like Obamacare is like a federal law that's all over the country. But some states have voted to say it's not the best thing for our state, so we are going to cancel it out or repeal it. So Southerners believe that since they voluntarily joined the Union, they could voluntarily leave it if they wanted to. And essentially, it's like saying, "Hey, I showed up to this party. I drove myself here. I can leave if I want to." And that's essentially what these South Carolina state representatives are going to do. On December 20th, 1860, just a few months after the election, South Carolina is the first state to secede. Secede means to leave or remove themselves from the United States. By the end of January 1861, 6 other states have seceded from the United States. So now they are their own country. So if you look back at the election map, so South Carolina down here in the green, what we'll see is that 6 more of these states also decide, hey, we're not doing this anymore. We're getting out of here. So back to this. In February of 1861, the 7 states form what become known as the Confederate States of America. So that'll become known as the Confederates. The northern states will become the North. So the North and the South. The Union is the North. The Confederate is the South. The CSA or the Confederate States of America elects former U.S. Senator Jefferson Davis as the first president of the Confederate States of America. The convention that meets in Montgomery, Alabama, also writes a constitution. It's based on the U.S. Constitution. It included that the Confederate States of America would support the theory of states' rights. So going back to the fact that if a state decides that a federal law isn't going to work for them, then they can get rid of it. It protected the institution of slavery. Obviously, that's a big thing for the CSA. They want to expand it, they want to protect it, and they don't want to get rid of it. The CSA then started to make plans to protect itself from the war with the North, which they think is ultimately going to come no matter what. In the North, they stated that secession of the southern states was unconstitutional. The North argued that the Union was sovereign, not the states. So basically what they're saying is that the United States is the entity, not the little states in the actual Union. What really happens here is that, like, if you look all the way back to the Revolutionary War, before you had even the United States, you had individual colonies that did things on their own and decided things for themselves. Moving forward, people begin to more along the lines think of it as an entire country. The southern states are arguing that we should go back to a situation where we are more individualized in our states and that we should decide things for ourselves. And the northerners are saying, no, we are all in this as one big group. They argue that if secession is allowed, it would basically just weaken the nation. So, I don't know, think of it like kind of like a basketball game. Like if 5 people are playing basketball at once and one of the people that is playing just decide, I think I'm just going to leave now, like that kind of weakens the whole team. But if you're all playing together and if you're all on the same page, you can go forward stronger and have an actual cohesive unit as a team and actually score points and win a basketball game. But if like 1 or 2 people just decide, I'm kind of out of this, I'm going to go sit down, now you're 4 versus 5 and you're kind of out of luck. So the North argued that secession was an argument against majority rule, since basically they just said Lincoln was elected and then he seceded. Basically what you're doing is being a sore loser. You are going against what the majority of people in the United States wanted, and that's unconstitutional. So you're going against those founding ideas of majority rule. John Crittenden proposed to keep the Union intact. He needed to do a few things, these 3 things. One is slavery should be protected in the South, below the border that was established by the Missouri Compromise. So he's saying, hey, we need to go back to the Missouri Compromise line. The second thing is Congress should abolish slavery should not abolish slavery in an existing slave state. So basically, if it is already existing, it cannot get abolished. And then the last thing is that the federal government should compensate or pay owners of fugitive slaves. So basically, if a fugitive slave runs away, that the federal government should step in and say, here's a certain amount of money to make up for that loss. Those are the 3 things that he proposed, that what he wanted to do. The proposed law was defeated in early 1861, ending any chance of a compromise. And basically now you just have people that are going to be angry and fighting over it stuff. On March 4th, 1861, Abraham Lincoln was inaugurated, which means he's sworn in as president, and he gives his inaugural address. He's the 16th president of the United States. His speech is to Northerners and Southerners, even though currently Southern states are a different country. In Lincoln's speech, he told the South that he had no intention of abolishing slavery. He's just trying to reassure them. He's saying, "Hey, we are not trying to get rid of slavery. We are just trying to abolish it. Or sorry, we're just trying to stop it from spreading." Lincoln said that he was against secession of the South, so basically he's saying, "Hey, you shouldn't have done that." And he did say that he did not intend to invade the South, but he would protect the northern forts and other property. So anything that's in the South, in those southern states that was technically the United States property, like any forts or army bases or anything like that, he's saying, hey, if you try to take those or we feel that we need those back, we will go in to protect those things. And that's actually what is going to kick off all of this fighting. What we'll see in the next unit is the introduction of fighting at Fort Sumter. So really that's it. What we have here is a presidential election. Like if you look, I did find this little kind of comic here that somebody had made. I assume it's probably student made. So you have the election of 1860. You have people that are like, you have people that are like, hey, attention Southerners, I am pro-slavery, and then Abraham Lincoln, he's got the top hat on. He's against slavery, against the expansion of slavery. Once that happens, you have the secession of the United States. And that is just because the election of 1860, you have the secession. And then what you have next is the American Civil War. So that's what we'll move on to into the next unit. I'm going to end this here. So hopefully, if you have questions, go ahead and feel free to ask them in the chat. But I am going to stop the recording just to cut it off there. So yeah, if you have questions, feel free to ask.